On March 15th, 2023, something happened that should have been the headline of every newspaper in America. But most people missed it completely. Saudi Arabia, the world's largest oil exporter and America's most critical financial ally, announced it would accept Chinese yuan for oil sales. Not dollars, yuan. For 49 years, ever since the Petrodollar deal was signed in 1974, there was one golden rule in global finance. If you want to buy oil anywhere in the world, you must pay in US dollars. This rule forced every country on Earth to hoard dollars, creating a permanent artificial demand for American currency. It was the infinite money glitch that allowed the US to print trillions without hyperinflation. But on March 15th, that glitch was patched. The monopoly was broken. This wasn't just a trade deal. It was stage 6 of a specific 8-stage collapse pattern that has destroyed every single reserve currency in history. The Portuguese real died this way in the 1600s. The Dutch guilder died this way in the 1700s. The British pound died this way in the 1900s. And now, the US dollar is following the exact same script, stage by stage, crisis by crisis. We are entering the most dangerous phase of the cycle, the phase where the free lunch ends and the bill comes due. In this video, I am going to show you the 8-stage pattern that predicts exactly how much time the dollar has left. I will show you why your standard of living is about to drop by 30%. And I will show you the one asset that survives every single currency collapse. But first, you have to understand why the dollar was king in the first place. Because it wasn't just about military power. It was about a specific economic cheat code that America has been abusing for 50 years. Before we look at the collapse, you need to understand exactly what we are losing. Reserve currency sounds like a boring banking term, but in reality, it is the ultimate economic weapon. It grants the holder 4 specific superpowers that no other country has. The most important one is what economists call seigniorage, but I call it the free lunch. Here's how the scam works. Because the world needs dollars to buy oil, thanks to the 1974 deal, the United States can simply print green pieces of paper and exchange them for real goods. We print paper, Saudi Arabia gives us oil. We print paper, China gives us electronics. We print paper, Germany gives us cars. This is an exorbitant privilege. It allows the American government to run massive deficits and the American consumer to live a lifestyle that our actual economy does not support. We are effectively taxing the rest of the world through inflation to subsidize our standard of living. The second superpower is cheap borrowing. Because every central bank on Earth needs to hold dollars in their vault to trade, they buy US Treasury bonds. This creates a permanent artificial demand for US debt. It allows our government to borrow trillions at rock-bottom interest rates. If any other country, say Brazil or Turkey, tried to borrow $36 trillion, their economy would implode overnight. But because we hold the reserve key, the world has to lend us money. But here's the catch. This privilege is addictive. It makes the empire lazy. It makes the government believe that debt doesn't matter. And that hubris is exactly what kills the currency. We have abused this privilege for 50 years, weaponizing the dollar through sanctions and printing money to fund wars. The rest of the world has noticed. They are tired of working for paper while we print it for free. This is the part of the story that the mainstream media ignores. They treat the dollar's dominance as a permanent law of physics. It isn't. It is a cycle. And we are tracking the end of that cycle right here. We are racing to hit 1,000 subscribers by December 31st, 2025. If we hit that goal, I am going to release the killer video, a script that exposes the next phase of this transition, specifically how the elites plan to trap your wealth in a digital cage when the dollar fails. I'm afraid to upload it But if we have 1,000 insiders, I will take the risk. So if you want to know the end game, hit that subscribe button right now. Now, let's look at the three empires that walked this exact same path before us, and how they all died in the exact same way. History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. And when it comes to money, it rhymes perfectly. Every global reserve currency follows the exact same 8-stage life cycle. It usually lasts between 80 and 110 years. Stage 1. Good money, gold, silver, creates trust. Stage 2. Economic dominance is established through trade. Stage 3. The country becomes a superpower. Stage 4. The country gets lazy and overextends, military, welfare. Stage 5. The country begins to debase the currency, printing, to pay for the overextension. Stage 6. Loss of trust. Competitors emerge. Stage 7. The crisis. A war or financial collapse forces a reset. Stage 8. The currency is replaced. Let's look at the receipts. In the 1500s, Portugal controlled the spice trade. The Portuguese real was the world's money. But they overextended their empire, fought too many wars, and debased their coin. By 1600, the Dutch guilder took over. The Dutch built the world's most sophisticated financial system in Amsterdam. They ruled for a century until they fought too many wars with Britain and printed too much money. By 1815, the British pound was king, as good as gold. But after World War I and II, Britain was bankrupt. They had borrowed too much to fight the Germans. In 1944, at Bretton Woods, the pound was officially replaced by the US dollar. Do you see the pattern? Rise, dominate, overextend, print, collapse. The United States is not special. We are just the latest empire to reach stage 6. We dominated in 1950. We overextended in Vietnam and Iraq. We began debasing in 1971 when Nixon closed the gold window. And now, in the 2020s, we are seeing the loss of trust. The timeline suggests we have about 10 to 15 years left before stage 7 hits. But the reason this collapse is happening now isn't just because of debt. It is because the US government made a fatal strategic error in 2022 that accelerated the timeline by a decade. The 8-stage collapse pattern usually takes decades to play out. But on February 26, 2022, the United States decided to speed-run the process. In response to the invasion of Ukraine, Washington didn't just sanction oligarchs. They did the unthinkable. They froze $300 billion of Russia's central bank reserves. This was the nuclear option of finance. The idea was to cripple the Russian economy instantly. Tactically, it hurt Russia in the short term. But strategically, it was the single biggest mistake in the history of the US dollar. Here is why. The entire global financial system is built on one word: trust. Central banks around the world park their savings in US Treasury bonds because they believe it is the risk-free asset. They believe that no matter what happens, that money is safe. By freezing Russia's sovereign wealth, the US broke that promise. They told the world, your money is safe, as long as you do what we say. Think about how that looked to Beijing. China holds nearly $1 trillion in US debt. They looked at the Russian freeze and realized, if we invade Taiwan, or if we just disagree with American trade policy, our life savings can be deleted with a keystroke. It looked the same to Saudi Arabia. It looked the same to Brazil. The US turned the dollar from a neutral utility into a political weapon. And the moment you weaponize the reserve currency, you kill it. This triggered a massive psychological shift in the global South. Countries realized that holding dollars wasn't saving money. It was buying a ticket to a hostage situation. So they started looking for an exit. They didn't just get angry, they got organized. They began building a new financial architecture that is immune to American sanctions. And the foundation of this new system isn't paper. It's the oldest money in the world. The moment the US weaponized the dollar, the great hedging began. Every neutral country looked at the frozen Russian reserves and realized they needed an insurance policy against Washington. This triggered the formation of a new economic axis designed specifically to bypass the American banking system. At the center of this axis is China. Beijing saw the writing on the wall immediately. They accelerated their de-dollarization strategy, dumping over $500 billion in U.S. Treasury bonds. They reduced their holdings from $1.3 trillion in 2013 to just $775 billion today. Where is that money going? It is going into gold. In 2022 and 2023, global central banks bought over 2,000 tons of gold, the highest sustained buying spree in 50 years. This isn't a coincidence. China, Russia, India, and Turkey are trading paper promises, U.S. debt, for hard assets, gold, that cannot be frozen by a sanction. They are building a war chest. But the most critical player in this new axis isn't China. It is Saudi Arabia. Remember, the petrodollar exists only because the Saudis agreed to price oil in dollars. But in 2023, the Saudis broke ranks. They joined the BRICS alliance, the economic bloc led by China and Russia. They announced they are open to trading oil in yuan. They are effectively telling the US, we don't need your protection anymore. We have other options. This is the death by 1,000 cuts. The network effect that kept the dollar dominant is flipping. China's alternative payment system, CIPS, has doubled its volume in 3 years, processing $27 trillion. The infrastructure for a post-dollar world is already built. It is live. It is processing payments right now. This brings us to the trillion-dollar question. The mainstream media tells you the dollar is invincible because there is no alternative. The data tells you the alternative is already here. So I want to know what you think. Look at the gold buying. Look at the BRICS expansion. Do you believe the US dollar will still be the world reserve currency in 10 years? Go to the comments and type just one word, yes or no. I want to see if the sentiment of the people matches the arrogance of the politicians. Because while the experts debate the timeline, the American people are about to pay the price. So when the dust settles from this financial war, who is left standing? The biggest winner is undoubtedly China. Beijing has been playing the long game for decades, waiting for the US to make a fatal mistake. By weaponizing SWIFT, Washington effectively forced the rest of the world into China's arms. The Chinese yuan is now the de facto trade currency for the axis of resistance. China's cross-border interbank payment system, CIPS, has seen exponential growth, doubling its transaction volume in just 3 years. They didn't have to defeat the US military. They just had to wait for the US Treasury to destroy its own customer base. They are building a commodity-backed fortress where they trade real goods for real resources, cutting out the American middleman entirely. The second winner is Russia. Strategically, they have pulled off the impossible. They proved that a G20 nation can be completely severed from the Western financial system and not only survive, but grow. This victory shattered the myth of American financial omnipotence. Russia is no longer isolated. It is the anchor of a new, alternative economic bloc that stretches from Moscow to Tehran to Beijing. And the losers? The biggest loser is the United States government. The dollar's exorbitant privilege, the ability to print unlimited money to fund military bases and budget deficits, depends entirely on global demand for the dollar. As that demand shrinks, the US will lose the ability to export its inflation. But the real victim isn't the government. It is you. The American consumer has enjoyed cheap imports, cheap oil, and low interest rates for 50 years because the world subsidized our standard of living. As the dollar loses its reserve status, those subsidies end. The cost of everything, from your iPhone to your gas to your mortgage, will permanently rise as the dollar loses its purchasing power abroad. We are moving from a world where America is the king to a world where America is just another country. And the scary part is, most Americans aren't prepared for the pay cut. This brings us to the final calculation. How long do we actually have before the music stops completely? The historical timeline suggests the window is closing faster than anyone in Washington wants to admit. So, how much time do we actually have left? If we use history as our guide, the timeline is terrifyingly precise. When Britain weaponized the pound in 1914, it started a clock. It took exactly 30 years, from 1914 to 1944, for the pound to lose its status as the world reserve currency. The United States started that same clock on February 26, 2022. But we don't have 30 years. Technology accelerates everything. In 1914, building an alternative payment system meant laying physical telegraph cables and shipping gold on boats. Today, China can scale its CIPS system with a software update. The network effects of the digital age mean that the decline will happen exponentially, not linearly. My estimate, based on the acceleration of the BRICS alliance and the gold buying spree, is that the US has about 15 to 20 years from the trigger event. That puts the potential end of dollar hegemony somewhere between 2037 and 2042. That sounds far away, but the effects will be felt much sooner. As the dollar's share of global reserves drops below 50%, likely by 2030, the US government will lose the ability to borrow cheaply. Interest rates will stay permanently high. Inflation will become sticky. The free lunch of the American empire is officially over. The swift weapon worked once, but it destroyed the gun in the process. This brings us back to our mission. We are tracking this decline in real time. We are building the only community that is actually preparing for the post-dollar world. And we have a goal. We are racing to hit 1,000 subscribers by December 31st, 2025. If we hit that number, I am going to release the killer video. This is the script I have already written that exposes the domestic mechanism the elites use to rig the stock market against you. I am genuinely afraid to upload it because it attacks the people who own the platforms. But if we hit 1,000 insiders, I will take the risk. Before I let you go, I want to talk to you directly for a second. Just you and me. No charts, no geopolitics. I know this is a heavy video. Realizing that your country has accidentally committed financial suicide and that your standard of living is likely to go down over the next decade is a hard pill to swallow. It creates anxiety. It makes you feel helpless, like you are strapped into a car that is driving off a cliff and you can't reach the steering wheel. I feel it too. Every time I see the debt clock tick up or see another country join BRICS, I feel that knot in my stomach. But I want you to reframe that fear. The fact that you watched this video to the very end proves something important about you. It proves you aren't one of the sheep. Most people are sleepwalking. They are watching TikTok dances while the financial order collapses. But you are here. You are looking the tiger in the eye. That means you have the survival instinct. The people who get crushed in these transitions are the ones who pretend nothing is changing. The people who thrive are the ones who accept reality and adapt. You are already ahead of 99% of the population just by knowing what SWIFT is. You are the smart money now. And you don't have to face this alone. I am going to be here every week, watching the signals, tracking the yuan, tracking the gold, and telling you exactly what it means for your wallet. We are going to navigate this transition together. And that brings me back to that killer video. I'm serious about that. The script is sitting on my hard drive. It exposes things about the domestic market that make these international sanctions look like child's play. I want to give it to you, but we need to build this stronghold first. So, if you trust me to lead you through the storm, help me hit that 1,000 subscriber goal. Not for the algorithm, but so we can build a community that the elites can't ignore. We are going to make it through the next 20 years. And we aren't just going to survive the shift, we are going to profit from it. So, you have a choice. You can go back to believing the mainstream news that says everything is fine. Or, you can click that subscribe button, join the insiders, and get ready for the new world order. The dollar is fading. Make sure you don't fade with it. Class dismissed.